Okay, so Susanna said we got to big milestones, I think last year?
Yeah,
last year,
September.
both of us. And when we talk about big milestones, we're actually talking about 10 years for both of us post-diagnosis. Two very different sets of stories, which we'll talk to you about in a bit, because that's the really important thing for me here to highlight to you. And I said it earlier on today, and I said it yesterday. Everybody is different, and you don't have to be stage 4 or stage 2 or stage 1 or stage 3 to have milestones or have moments that you really look forward to, or that you're frightened about, or that you're scared about, or anxiety or anything like that. Everybody's experience is as valid as anybody else's. We've kind of, I don't want to say stalked is a good word. We've followed each other's progress with great interest for a couple of reasons. We have kids that are a very similar age, like you heard, 10 years at the same sort of point. We've pretty much followed each other online. We've both blogged about our experiences. We've both seen these certain moments. And online, you'll hear all of these patients talking about their cancerversary. And so when we've got to the first cancerversary or the cancerversary number 5, we've sort of been delighted and sort of relished and been so proud of each other reaching those points in time. And a bit like these stepping stones, we've got these milestones that we look at, and each of us in this room have different ones. But they're not always on stable ground. And sometimes you feel that you might fall off into the water on the side of the stepping stones, or sometimes the stepping stones are really big, or sometimes they're really small milestones, and they seem inconsequential to somebody else, but to you, they're massive and they're enormous. And so it was really important to sort of talk about it from a whole range of different perspectives. And then a patient online, again, similar to us, who got to the 10-year point, shared a poem. And when she shared the poem, I reached out to Susanna and said, yeah, this is what we need to cover. We need to deal with the milestones, and we need to talk about the things that have impacted us, the things that have impacted our families, and the milestones that we have had along the way, and what they've meant at different points. So the poem's from Melanie Rawlings, and she wrote it last year, again, 10 years at the same time as us. In shadows cast by silent fears, a tale unfolds dispelling tears. It's melanoma's ominous race. In CT scans, a hopeful grace. No metastatic evidence found. Normal echoes all around. Colonoscopy results in 2, polyps removed, all's good, thank you. 10 years in the clinical trial, grateful hearts evoke a small smile, quietly high-fiving the uneasy unseen, a dance with hope where fears have been. No jinx is cast, just caution's thread. Vigilance lingers where worries tread. Sun's safe care an eternal oath. Copious sunscreen prevents cancer growth. Malignant melanoma, a sneaky beast. The worry's still there, but there's hope at least. A healthy lifestyle, common sense in the sun, enjoying this life's battle near one. And I found that really compelling, and I hope you do too. So, let's talk about where we're at. So, thinking back to the last 10 years, and let's start at kind of a bit of a brutal point. What was your low point in the last 10 years? What was the point of a milestone or a low point for you?
Well, my 10-year thing's complicated because to be fair, my 10 years in September was my stage 4. I was originally diagnosed 2011. My absolute low point remains being diagnosed stage 4. It was quite the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. And I mean, it's terrifying for anybody when it happens, but back then, when I knew what stage 4 meant, which 10 years ago meant 6 to 9 months, very few treatment options, you'd have to fail chemo to get IPI. I mean, it was madness, nothing was approved. That was my 100% lowest point. Nothing has, there's been blips along the way, but that was the worst.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, aside from the obvious initial epic failing and the brutal entry into melanoma, fighting to have a mole removed for sort of 14 months or more, that was horrible and scary and a really low point. But the actual low point along the process was In 2013, there were limited options. I was stage 2C, told I would be lucky to survive 5 years, told it was really aggressive. There aren't any options available for you on the NHS. Oh, there might be a clinical trial. And I went through this battery of tests to get onto a clinical trial, only to fail at the last hurdle because a secondary cancer was found. But it was like the rug being pulled out from underneath my feet for the second time. I felt like my body had failed me. I felt like I'd lost all hope and there was absolutely nothing that I could do. And the thing was, I was blissfully unaware of how many other people actually fail baseline tests for clinical trials. We all sit in the room going, yay, a clinical trial. But there's so many people who go up for clinical trials and they just can't get onto them. Okay. That's low, that's gloomy.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't a high point.
What about high point then? What was your high point? Or do you have more than one high point?
I think there have been so many high points in the last 10 years, it's kind of not true. Because when I was diagnosed, I was told I'd got months, not years. And I was diagnosed in September, and I said, what about Christmas? And they went, maybe. Yeah. So literally everything that's happened since. And my boys then were 5 and 7. And I wanted to see them to like the end of... That's not fair. I wanted to see them to the end of... No, it's all right. To the end of like the school year. And then I wanted to see, you know, various significant birthdays. And then I wanted to see them leave primary school. And then I wanted... And the thing is, all along the way, there have been just different milestones, mostly related to my boys. Because in the end... You know, there have been other things, just like, you know, I've been with my husband 30 years this April, which is amazing. It's a really ridiculously long time. But I wasn't worried about him in the same way. I did not want to leave my boys without me because I knew, particularly when they're little, how much they needed their mum. And so there have just been just so many points. So I've seen them, you know, I saw them out of those school years. I saw them out of primary school. I've seen them into secondary school. I have sat in astonishment watching them fly through all of this stuff. Both of them this year have got exams. My eldest will finish school, he's 18 now, and my little one, my baby, is 16 next week, and, you know, GCSEs this summer.
And they were shorter than you then?
Oh, they were really tiny. And now, it's really odd, I've shrunk. I've definitely shrunk. That literally was about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, what happened to me? Did they put a hole, you know, to put me in?
Yeah, exactly. So mine, and we did talk these through when we had a phone call a couple of weeks ago to prepare for this. And so she stole the family one. So obviously I've got milestones along the way that are linked to the family and kids, but I'm not going to do that because you've heard that one already. For me, it actually is linked to this and the conference. So when I was diagnosed, I felt this enormous isolation. I was so unhappy. I was so scared. I was the same sensations and feelings that every single one of you in the room feel. And for me, my high point was actually leaving the very first patient conference in 2016. Which is going to sound weird in a minute when I tell you about it, but I got to this point, I had put the conference together, I had a minibus. I live in Gloucestershire and the conference was in Bristol, and there's like the M32 and then up the M4. And I had a minibus and I had to take all of the things back home and drop off the minibus. And my husband was in convoy with me and he left me at the conference, full glamour, looking fine. And then we met at the other end, and it was a different story. Because literally, I got onto the M32, and it was at that point that I realised, oh my God, I needed that. I wish I had that at the point when I was diagnosed. And I sobbed from the moment I got onto the bottom of the motorway all the way back home to the point that I got out of the truck and my husband looked at me and the mascara was down to my knees and he's like, what on earth happened to you? Bizarrely, tears and all, that was my high point because we've now got this. And for me, this is the lifeline for me and for so many of you. It's that connection, it's that point of hope, and it's that opportunity to see a better end to things. Okay? So you kind of touched on this a bit. Have your milestones changed? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I said before. I keep being astonished by sort of meeting them. And when I was diagnosed, I it was just a few days before my 37th birthday, and I remember sort of sending a message out and trying not to freak people out by going, you know, it's not great news. I mean, it's really bad news, but I'll do everything I can and I'll do the treatment, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to see 40, but, you know, I'm going to be 48 this year. I mean, really, I'm getting fabulously old. I've never been so happy. So it's that. I mean, that's just like this kind of mad thing. People are talking about 50, and I'm like, 50? I mean, really, it's just too exciting. So yeah, they keep changing.
I know. Everybody else on the whole entire planet's like, oh my God, wrinkles. We're like, yes!
Honestly, I'm literally like, grey hair, hurrah! You.
Yeah, no, I think mine are the same. And the milestones have changed because time has changed. So like I said at the beginning, I was told I'd be lucky to get to 5 years, or if I got to 5 years, I'd be fighting a battle. And I haven't been. I've been really lucky. I've remained at stage 2C for the whole entire 10 years. Now, for me, initially, the kids were really little. We didn't tell them very much because we just didn't know what we could or had to face. And I wasn't stage 4. We thought we'd tell them if I progressed. And so for me, it was getting my kids through primary school. And when I was diagnosed, they were diddies, just like Lucy's. They were teeny tinies. They had no idea what was going on, apart from the fact that Mum and Dad were blubbing constantly like loony. I'm sorry, sweetheart. So my daughter's actually here. Because she's now 16 and she's doing a psychology course, and she really loves the idea of helping and following through on it. And you have to stop crying because you're going to make me cry. So she's gone. She's being gone from this cute, adorable, red-headed thing that just never stopped smiling to being this, again, she doesn't stop smiling, but she wears makeup and she answers back. And so for me, my high points are linked to the kids, but my biggest one was the primary school, getting them both out at the other side of primary school. Yeah. I didn't think it would happen, and it did, and I was a blubbing mess on the front row in the village church on the day when it happened. And all of the other kids in the room were like, what is wrong with your mum? Okay, so nice, let's move it on to a nice thing, because I think coming attached with milestones, and we've talked about this a lot over the last sort of 24 hours, comes attached to distraction techniques and how you cope, how you deal with the anxiety, how you get past things. What has been your go-to or your distraction along the 10 years?
In the last few years, actually through quite a lot of exercise. I didn't think I was going to be that person. I think it's that thing, is that melanoma took all the control away and exercise has given me some back, and I've become one of those annoying people who's really into it. This is my first day this year I haven't been running, which is just like, and I do that. I do a lot of kettlebells, and then, you know, other stuff, friends, talking to people, learning to talk to people, learning to tell the truth about how I feel about it all, which is really, really difficult. And that caught me out last year when I hit the 10 years and I suddenly was like, why am I suddenly so stressed, because this is an amazing milestone, there shouldn't be a sad thing, and realised that I had just sort of somewhere along the way tried to pretend that I was like everybody else, and realising that actually I'm not. Living with melanoma is really, really hard. I live it in 12-week cycles between scans still. That hasn't changed, and it's tiring. So, but learning to talk to people, be more honest, feel way better now I've started doing that.
Yeah. No, running for me too, well, exercise for me too, but not anywhere near I'm not as good as Lucy.
That's not true.
I'm also not as frequent as her. Like, she'll run in the rain. There is no way I'll step outside in the rain.
I like the rain.
Yeah. Okay, so would you have done anything differently?
I think the only thing... No. I mean, I think the only thing I'd have done differently would have been pre the stage 4 diagnosis. I would have changed hospital much earlier than I did. I changed hospital when I was diagnosed stage 4. I knew something wasn't right. I knew my team wasn't right. I knew that I wasn't being properly looked after, and I changed hospital, and that was, well, life-saving. But the other changes, again, when I was hitting 10 years last year, I was sort of having regrets, thinking, gosh, if I'd known I'd have 10 years, would I have done stuff? Would I have, carried on running a business, or would I have, just done a course or done something? And actually, I made that decision 10 years ago when I was really unwell, that what I wanted to do was spend time with my children. And I was thinking, well, I've done that. I mean, I'm driving them mad because they're 16 and 18. They don't want me to spend time with them. But in the long run, I sort of know I did the right thing. So no, I couldn't really change anything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, mine's, I guess, different because I'm not stage 4, so I don't have the constant battery and ongoing scans and treatment issues that Lucy's got. But for me, I think I'd have tried to be a bit more light-hearted at the beginning. So because I was so scared, I was really neurotic. And we laughed about this when we were preparing for this meeting. I became a monster for the kids because I tried to instill in them their moral framework, because in my head, my husband wasn't going to be able to do that. There was no way he was going to manage to make sure that they were nice, rounded people. He was going to give them the fun stuff, and he was going to teach them, how to go to the rock concerts and how to rebel and how to be naughty. And I needed to make sure that they did their P's and their Q's and that they followed the right rules through life. And so it was almost like hyper-stressed, hyper-focused on making sure that they had the framework of moral structure underneath them. And that probably took some of the carefree out of me. And that's the only thing I would have done differently, was perhaps to share that burden, that I could actually still enjoy some of those early moments that I found really quite terrifying.
I also realised it's quite difficult to do that to really small children, because when we talked about it, I did exactly the same. I was like, oh gosh, the children need to know everything, about the sort of morals of everything. But they were, they're 5 and 7.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they just needed to know how to tie their shoelaces. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking family. I know we've sort of approached talking to the children and how to prepare them very differently, mainly because you had to sort of talk about it much earlier. But how has melanoma impacted on the family?
I asked them this the other day because I realised I'd answered, when we talked about it, I'd answered, and I sort of said, well, for my husband, he's been along with me for the ride and therefore kind of knows, he's felt it the same way I have. And with my boys, I just don't know. They're just used to what you grow up with is you think is normal. I don't think it occurs to them that other people book their summer holiday in January, whereas we book our holiday about 4 minutes before we go, because I've always got a summer scan, or that we have not for 10 years, I haven't planned more than 12 weeks ahead. They don't really question it. So when I asked them about it and sort of said, what impact has it had on you? And they just, they went all teenage.
Yeah.
They just kind of, grunted,
yeah,
really.
Exactly.
They've been completely remarkable, I think, is the answer. They seem very unfazed by it all. I occasionally sort of say to them, do you talk to your friends about it? I think generally not. It's not that they, I've always been really open. I've given them the words from the beginning. I always, even pre-stage 4, I said it was cancer. I've always been really, really clear with them. The only thing I never told them was how bad the prognosis was. And I don't regret that, because it was wrong. So they didn't need to know that. And possibly because maybe they never realised quite how serious it was. They still don't. I don't know. I had a difficult scan last summer when something came up and they thought there was something on my brain. And that properly terrified me, pulled the rug out and all of that stuff. And I was talking to my younger son, who will talk to me about this stuff a bit more, and he just went, oh, but Mum, you've had this sort of thing before. It's always fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what he believes. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, let's find out in 4 weeks when they scan again. And then it was fine. He went, yeah, I told you. So, okay.
Yeah. And for us, it's like, it's a reason for a special meal, or the bubbles come out, and they're like, oh, bubbles, it must be one of these times.
Yes. Yeah.
Or this one, my daughter, shade bathed. We all go, now that we're braver about things, now that I'm more comfortable outside, we go on holidays in the sunshine, and like me, we shade bathe, at the points when the shadows are longer than us, or no, shorter than us, because then the sun's too high and it's too dangerous. And she literally doesn't change colour at all when we go on holiday, because my kind of constantly instilling the importance of the sun protection and care has had an impact. So
I
that's
take
been quite great.
Glowing white boys home from Greece every summer, go, yay! And their friends all look and go, I think I'm on holiday. Like, yes, I'm winning.
Okay, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you go about telling them? And were there milestones that they focused on that you were surprised by?
No, because like I said, they just don't seem to think about it. I mean, as I said, I was just really, really just honest with them. I did give them all the information. And I do remember, because it was always a school run, that's when the questions would come, being asked right at the beginning, because they obviously knew things went right. Everyone kept turning up at our house and crying. All sorts of people don't usually come around, just turn up and cry and hug us. And they were like, and I remember walking to school, and I don't remember which of my boys, but them just saying, so when will you die, mummy? And me just going, and they got my stock answer, which is I will do everything I can. I am in the best place, the best hospital, having the best treatment. I am doing everything I can to be here as long as possible. I won't be here as long as I wanted to be. That was the answer I gave them.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, it's just difficult, isn't it? But no, as I said, they are ridiculously resilient and apparently hugely optimistic about my plans.
Yeah. And for me, I think it was wrongly or rightly, we didn't really tell the kids. They obviously knew, they saw the tears and all of that kind of thing. But like I said, I was stage 2C, it hadn't progressed. Decided between my husband and I that we weren't going to put the kids in at the deep end or give them a whole load of emotions that they didn't know how to deal with while they were in primary school. We actually told them at the end of primary school, or sort of the point in between Joe and Harry going to secondary school, because Joe had just started secondary school, or one of the exercises at the end of primary school was you Googled yourself. And of course, that then naturally leads to Googling everybody else. And they Googled my name. And then that brings up all of the stuff to do with the patient conference and the link to my blog and the link to all of the cancer stuff and all of that kind of thing. And so it was a case of, right, well, look, here's the blog that I've written. You can read it if you want to. This is what we do. They kind of knew about all of the conference stuff, but they didn't really kind of connect the dots too much until that point. So for them, that was a big one, I think, for them, the realisation of mortality and not really having understood it before. What about now? Have you got milestones now? Do you think you need them?
I don't think I will ever relax. I won't. The reason I'm still alive is I take the pills every day. I mean, I do know that because I've had, quite 3-4 recurrences along the way. It's not, I've had a lot of changes of treatment. I've worked my way through all the immunotherapies several times and now the targeted. So I do continue to live on the 12-week cycle. In fact, when I spoke to you last, I was just heading into my scans. And then since then, I had scan results. Everything is stable. So I am at the really good point in the 12-week cycle because I've got a nice stable scan behind me. But I'm excited about this summer. I'm actually looking ahead to the fact that both my boys have got these massive things. They're finishing school, both of them. That's extraordinary. I still can't quite dare look forward to September. That's too far away. And I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. So no more milestones. But, no sort of constant milestones, but no specific ones. I want to see it all, but I don't quite trust that still, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I can understand that because you're still living from scan to scan and you're still on the treatment. From my perspective, there's the lack of security now in that sense. I don't get scans anymore. I'm kind of left to my own devices, need to check my own skin, need to kind of make sure that I'm aware and hypervigilant. I've got the touch point all the time because obviously I'm connected to all of you guys and through the patient conference. But I don't know, I guess any excuse for a party. Every single birthday of mine or anybody else's, let's celebrate it because we might not get one tomorrow. Every cancerversary, it's marked massive on the calendar, and we do something. We find literally any excuse for a party, and why not? Okay, how did you? This is sinking it back down just a teeny bit again. How did you prepare for milestones that you might miss?
I haven't, and I didn't. There's a certain amount of, desperately trying to teach my children all sorts of stuff that they were too young to comprehend. Because when I was diagnosed stage 4 and it was all really bleak, I got immediately referred to sort of palliative care and was given as palliative care nurse and went through all of that. And she came to visit and sort of said, have you thought about writing letters? Do you want to do memory boxes? Do you want to do this, that, and the other? And I just went, I'm really not ready. It was that a mad thing. I was ridiculously ill at the time, but I didn't see it. I look back at photos now and go, wow, no wonder everyone looked at me in a really horrified way. I was just sort of disappearing and grey, and just all I was managing to do was do the school run with the boys because I'd take all the painkillers that I'd been given and all the morphine and God knows what and strap heat pads to my back, and that's what I was doing. And yet I didn't feel like I was dying. I was frightened about it, but I wasn't ready to start making those sort of plans. The only thing I did was I have like all the addresses and the dates of all the various nephews and nieces' birthdays, all that, all just like all over the place, mostly in my head. And I got a proper address book and I wrote everything out because I thought, God, otherwise my husband's going to just be in trouble all the time. He'll never know anything. And it's the only concrete thing I did. And I sorted out finance. I did all of that sort of stuff. But then I was supposed to explain what I'd done and leave it, helpful. I haven't done that. I've just taken charge of everything, but not in a very helpful way.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're the same. It's similar, again, not to the same extent. Preparing to have it randomly going for a walk with my husband, just sort of going, would you like to be buried or cremated? And just having these random conversations, just because I come across mortality so much that actually I felt it was really important that we were aligned and we'd had those discussions and that we were both aware of our own wishes and needs.
Yeah, I was forced into it because we went to New York just like 6 months after my diagnosis, because it was our 20 years together at that point. And we're like, this is what we want to do. And my mum and sister really firmly went, you are not getting on a plane until you've done a will. I was like, oh, cheery. Which meant we had those conversations suddenly because someone was there going, do you want to be buried or cremated? I was like, well, this is quite useful. It's really quite sensible we did that.
Yeah, or travelling without travel insurance because you can't get it and you really want to go somewhere, but you were not able to get it because the cost of it is just insane.
Yeah, and I totally relate to what Willie was saying about that earlier. It is one of the most traumatic things. I think time and time again, it would just floor me trying to get travel insurance or being turned down and being asked questions that you go, that's just rude. How dare you ask about my liver? It's mine. I mean, awful. I've given up now. I am insured for everything bar the melanoma. Yeah. And I only ever travel after a good scan. It's just easier.
So has it changed you then, melanoma?
This has been fascinating. It's been on my mind all week since I saw it on the questions. Yes, but the changes are all really good, and that's really confusing. I'm an awful lot fitter and healthier than I was. I could run very fast. I didn't know that I was going to be able to do that. I really properly appreciate the little things. I don't sweat the small stuff. People are like, oh, if you've got a bucket list, there are things you want to do, you must have all of this sort of stuff. And I worked out really quickly that the thing that makes me happiest is just sitting there with Andy and my boys, and it's so simple. So it's, holidays, wonderful, but actually just us all sitting watching telly, having a meal together. Yeah. I make us all sit around eating at the table as often as I can actually pin everyone at the house because I just like that. And the boys are like, oh, got nothing to say, I don't care. It's the little stuff. And I think I live my life so much better than I did before from that point of view. I sort of wish that everyone could have the insight, but without the diagnosis. But it doesn't work like that. No. But it is really, really weird because when I was thinking about how it changed, I was just like, it's all really positive stuff. That's not what I'd have expected.
No, I know.
And yet I would happily be rid of the bastard tumours that still lurk around my liver. I don't need them. They can go.
No, they can. Yeah. They can. We can say goodbye to those.
Yeah.
I think similarly, actually, it's that bit where I am stronger now. I have the ability to say no, the confidence in questioning things that I just didn't have before. It's given me a lease of life and an interest in advocacy in the clinical trial space. I've changed my career. I'm now working in the same realm, and that has given me so much enjoyment and pleasure. And actually, the joy I get from this conference and from similar things of seeing and helping other people, that's probably the greatest gift, I think, out of all of it, is that I've got all of you lot, the extension of the family. It's a really good thing that's happened. So for me and for Lucy, and we look at these and that's kind of our message on the milestones to the 70 plus people who've never been to this conference before, and to all of you who are going through various battles and challenges or who have their own milestones coming up. We just wanted to give you hope, really, because, we've both got to these amazing milestones and we've got to these points where we never thought we'd get to. And we watch so many other people coming to those same places and just celebrate each and every moment and milestone that you've got. I think we might even have a couple of minutes. If anybody else in the room wants to answer any one of these or share anything, please stick your hand up and we can throw a microphone in your direction.
That's quite painful.
Literally throw. There was one year that we did the patient conference and the AV crew had this and it wasn't a ball, was it an inflatable ball or something like that? And they thought it was a fun idea that they literally throw the ball across the people to catch. Oh my God, bad idea. Yeah, okay. I don't think we've got any questions or anybody wants to specifically dive into these. So let's get the three previous speakers back up onto the stage for a wider Q&A.